toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Guidance. A series of catchphrases I'll read to you that I've consider, catchphrases. Archipelagos of sounds that I learned from my readings of old classics. It's a large generalization, but seems like today anything past 1900s into the 1800s, 1700s is considered classic on today's standards. But in particular, I'm thinking of Theodore Recky's collection of poems, Straw for the Fire, which is largely fragments that were in his notebooks that they collaborated and put together. I also was thinking of Percy Shelley. He has many strong, complete, resounding poems, but so much was going through his life, through his being, and he left also large landscapes of broken poems. And I think it goes the way it goes, you know. If there's any kind of take to seeing a vision or including a revelation or a clarification or any form of the emotions like joy and happiness, anything that stimulates those and kind of gives you a higher understanding of what those emotions are, because those emotions, not just the happiness you can experience in the body, but there's also a brighter happiness, an astral aspect to it that is declared through the stars. There's much more uniqueness through my readings of the books. I'm finding there's such a grand uniqueness in this time loop, if you will, simulation. Humanity, for as long as we can find recorded data, has long been trawling and carrying this. I wouldn't say we definitely had the yoke around our necks bearing this image, especially when we settled down more and more into this body, because it was a process. Evolution, Darwin certainly has a lot of interesting insights as to how all things were made. Is a molder, a sculptor as well. So there's a design within. There's of course the more scientific aspect into that too. We can study our own blood cells and see what they do, not only from our body on a large scale, but then actually go into the cell itself. So telescopes, outward or inwards, no different. But what I find in books is this kind of transcendental value. Who knows what kind of technologies or civilizations occurred before. In a way, there seems to be quite a history of civilizations lapsing and then disappearing off the map. There's a lot of talk through Rudolf Steiner and a lot of those Gurdjieff. Humanity's been around much longer, but we were experienced into different aspects. And one of the big questions was, all those things we've seen, the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, can't quite say the word, Homer and all that stuff, the Battle of Troy, we want to say a lot of that's very immersed in fiction, but we got to consider the eyes of the beholder and what they really saw. That's difficult, because you see how science has how it manifests in our reality on a very large scale, and it's tremendously difficult to kind of have an imagination that was once the one we shared as a child. And so we kind of have to fight and struggle for it, but we do it in kind of placistic ways, through, not to discount what we're doing through Amazon or Google. I've certainly in the last month really started to discover, you got to trust the process regardless, and to accept the world's already burning in a sense, in a large sense, truth. But um, to remain um, in the truth of who you are, and to not let it wash you out. In a way, this does take a kind of value of observing what we consider the enlightenment or progress or future as this transcendental object in which we've been holding around our shoulders throughout the histories and keeping it in the books. And books are one of the most technologically advanced things we have. But so is our language. Language is phenomenal in such that there's 3 degrees of it. There's voice, speech, and word. Voice, and this can play in a large scope to oracles and schizophrenics. There's this kind of voice, and it mostly sounds like yours in the long run when voice, speech, and word unite. But there's this kind of voice. It's a resonance that circumnavigates your biological system. But it also operates in a large, wide frequency, especially up here in the corona, but also in the solar plexus. And definitely seated around this pineal gland, if anything above and around that area, are these particular cells called the glial cells, which I like to kind of consider are the leaves that hang just dimensionally into this world and the outer world. It's a very thin kind of raining curtain that connects us to the etheric energy realm, and they number trillions more than our actual neural cells, neurons in our body. So it kind of makes you wonder all the information that's passing through, that's not only giving information to it has to give information to every cell in our body, to every aspect, because every aspect from joint to tendon to eyelash to bone cell to atom and all those things each have a certain band around it, a protective band or a guiding band around it. It's an incredible, beautiful working machine that we kind of inhabit, you know. So on the topic of I'm going to read you these catchphrases, and I think these catchphrases may have a little thought on the injection, you know what I mean? Let me just read you. I'm hoping, since I'm kind of going into this, that this music in the background is not overpowering it, but I'll just read you a series of things. The coy word like sneaks between every say, slang, and hunch. Saying this in regard to another, even if they are seemingly opposite points. Point concords point. As to another common coy injection, you know. How many times do we catch ourselves saying it? I wonder if it's a glitch. Of course we know that which is so knowing it unknows itself and has to remember again, which almost always results in the use of a great hum. Perhaps your humming is an invitation to repose and measure out your worth. No wonder the Buddhists held their attention so steadily. We each have our own Om wattage, like our day-to-day circuitry. We won't quite know the wattage, nor what the drive will be. The next one. To wager life by the day creates a spendthrift. That sun has a similar fate as ours, in that it abides towards a greater knowing. It too wagers life towards the unknowable, unsizable now. Now that's a way to walk. Feel the ground loosen. You had only thought it held you. Our use of the compound words have striking effects on our self-affirmative spirits, like Facebook. Yes, it appears as an efficient tool for speaking solely to people, but it is only the shadow of the entire ever-realizing spirit in action. A white shadow, but beneath it is Shadows. A certain kind of whispering in the wind affirms me of this, and the consciousness of confidence and faith continues. But this realizing spirit has nothing to realize towards, for it is the realization itself. It only invites us, and we're either compelled to or compelled otherwise, because everyone and everything is charged by is. It is so is that it needs no the. One moment. Plug my computer in. Another compound word. Lodestar. A tool that helps guide fares of all kind. For we are all in the great thrumming, humming sea. And your heart? Oh, it swims steadily, but only if you keep the fire going. Kingfishers. Granted, the beauty of the bird, the kingfisher is of great worth. Though we go on naming the unnameable manifestations of the gestating spirit, we must not forget sea waves catch fire, and their thrashing hiss says it as we must say it. Though we search for the name, the word that can save all of us, my kingfishers, rule out what is yours and what is not. Cast your line and wait, a bite will come. As on this planet, it was not happenstance that it came to be. There are other indices of time and space, too, who also receive the blessing of life. Seed to seed, child to child, eye to eye, star to star, galaxies onward, the tree of light sways, and we are all moved to catch fire. The only choice is not to see it, and to die before you ever had a chance to see it. Measure yourself, O basant waves, and take treasure. We hang on these branches like ripening fruit. At any moment, you will be picked, savored, and shared. Be sure you do not leave anything wavering. The light invites you. Joy invites you. The world doesn't end in a bang or a whimper, but in the blink of an eye. But that is just the beginning. When you open your eye, volcanoes erupt and new lands form. Behold the body within the body. Everything you ever longed for or missed, know that was the magnanimity of the universe on its knees. Its head spins, and we spin. Gravitational waves, light speeds, black holes. Even if you scuff a single pebble on the sidewalk, there's enough discovery to quake your entire being. I saw 1 trillion cherry blossoms live and die in a blink of an eye. Star-studded black-holed seas in the soil somewhere. A jonquil opens, then closes. Everything it ever gathered in its lap between what is called life and death is the secret, and I follow it. Be kind, be gentle to yourself. Be kind, be gentle to yourself. By all means, let the others speak and be heard. But if they know this, then you have with you a greater understanding. Silence. There is only one economy worth investing towards. Mind, spirit, and body. Mentality, vitality, existence. Spirit and body are the plenum, and take whatever shape they need. Self-generated. Ideas, families, textures, colors. And from their most basic function to the highest appeal. But mind is the sole pivot on which we circumnavigate. Consider this the size of a pinprick. Try not to imagine anything bigger. Such a future or what you can become. Let become what becomes, but do it with discernment. Only you know what that means. Discernment can be like a ball game. Don't miss your mark. Keep your eye on the ball and don't miss the catch. My only suggestion, waver on a confident stride and a faithful eye. Home run. Another compound word to sum it all up. Try not to pay so much heed to what is popular. It becomes aesthetics in time, as is our nostalgia for antiquity. Today's valorizations, fashion, complex, strange symbols, and unexplained phenomena were as much as their own time as ours, because they are us. Pay heed to what is rising beneath and above simultaneously. Be both the lamb and the wolf. Go ahead, send all the love letters you can. Hi, I'm here. I'm here is all I hear when I speak to someone. I'm not shunting you aside, nor am I necessarily uninterested. There ought to be some amount of integrity to this indifference towards one another. We have degrees of repelling and attracting. You know not that which compels you. Even if you have an idea, be wary of the affirmation without playing dully towards the one who is the recognition itself. The one who faces you needs what it needs for however long. This means you have the power of discernment and grace to know who you do not belong to. Again, this is the economy of mind, spirit, and body. You've been displaced, unrecognizable, without a country, jurisprudence to the weight of genealogical years, the weight of your grandparents and the neighbors of unfulfilled deviances. Raise yourself to the intercession of faiths. Open your hands to those who present with you, spirits of the land and stars. Ask and pray with an open heart that they may help you align your precision toward the word. Should you deviate, know all ways are one. There's a heavy spider on the wall. Careful, careful keeping steps. One leg on the mirror, another. Then one of those thousand of eyes sees itself and without a noise falls behind my desk. There's Tinder, and then you meet Tinder. Date of fate at the grading of a listless swipe. Tweedledee tweedledum. Why'd the roadrunner always get the pass between the walls? Always escapable. Of and not the chase. Why? Because it knew it had wings. Poor coyote. So hungry his shadow burns at the tips of his own disgrace, though walking on air, surprised with fear, falls. I carry 2 stones wherever I go, gather them from Pebble Beach, California. When tapped together 6 or 7 times in repetition, I receive a memory of some bird I heard in some bush in the back of some house I lived in somewhere. Is it the stone or the bird's call? Bird on my mind, stone in my hands. You know what I mean, yo? Lordy, take your slow. I have my own unknowing to attend to. I begged for poems and ate through them as if let me read that again. I begged for poems and ate through them as if they were slop. Now I have a mess everywhere and the feed is still on. A middle-amost, a sand flea's backside, the waters that I see, the roar it must accept as its own sky. I believe that this is long enough. Much of Teal Swan's videos happens about around the 19-minute mark, 20-minute mark. I think this is good. I'm slowly trying to adapt to these videos and how I can just share something that I feel is glowing and illuminating the way and directing my spirit, the scope of my spirit that I can still call possessively my, is that I hope these words and through poetry and just presence, being here with you, whatever time you access this video, we're here together. You know, don't care to look at the time. But yeah, I just want to, these are things that just guide us along, guide us usward. William Blake, throughout his poem The Four Valas, which is a phenomenal piece of vision, But fragmentary too, which is exciting because it kind of helps your it allows your imagination to, imagine something through it. But there's gnosis all through it. I mean, he certainly was reading the Gnostics. But he called England, for at that time it was, he was living through the French Revolution and right around the time of the American Revolution. So there's a lot of civil action going on, and violence and natural disasters. And he called England Albion, which is an old name. I don't know too much the origins. But essentially, England was the sun of humanity. Was humanity as a singular person. Which I find very fascinating in a lot of the older works, is that they, all cultures, but particularly when I studied a lot of the Western culture, did try to build a sturdy focus on this kind of transitory stature, this stance, this sturdy oneness, which is extremely vital. And it's a principle that's not one or zero, really. It's a thing that's left to the unnameable, unknowable thing, but we direct all of our efforts towards it, and it guides us. And so I think I've read long enough. You could tell I'm still trying to develop how to think through this and what to offer. I don't want to give it all away because I don't know what all I have. It's important. Knowledge comes when knowledge comes, and I realize that for myself. So I don't want to be a warbling madman yet, but we'll see. Thank you for listening. This is another podcast of Inmolven. I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Bye.